In this video, I'm going to show you how to configure static and default route for IP version 6. The syntax to configure IP version 6 static route is very similar to IP version 4 static route. In the global configuration mode, we do IPv6 route instead to have IP route for IP version 6. Then we have the remote network with a prefix length, and we are not going to use the subnet mask for IP version 6 network. Then the static route can configure with a next hop IP address that will be IPv6 address, and also can be configured with an exit interface just like IP version 4. And the IPv4 and IPv6 static route also can be configured with both exit interface and the next hop IP address. That is known as a fully specified static route. When we change the distance value, we can make it a floating static IP version 6 route. And I built a very simple topology to demonstrate how to configure static default route for IP version 6. So in this topology, we have two routers connect to each other. Router A connect to network 2001 DB8 CAFE network. The interface IP address is .1. I have PC. PC has IP address is .5. Then R2 has a two IPv6 network attached to it. One is a 2001 DB8 Cafe 1, and another one is Cafe 2. Both of them has a prefix /64. I connected two PC to them, and both of them has IP address .5. The connection between router 1 and router 2 has IPv6 address 2001 DB8 CAFE 12 with a /64. At the moment, all these three PC are configured with IPv6 address, and the prefix is 64, also has a router interface as a default gateway. So this is a unique IPv6 address, but the default gateway can be linked local address of the router interface. Let's check the routing table for the router. So on R1, I can do show IPv6 route instead to do the show IP route for IPv4 routing table. On router 1, we can see they are directly connected network. So we have 2001 DB8 CAFEA and CAFE12. That is for the connection between router 1 and router 2. Routing for IPv4 is enabled by default, but routing for IPv6 is disabled by default. So to enable IPv6 routing on the router, we need to configure with IPv6 unicast routing first. Without this command, we can configure the interface with IPv6 address, but the router won't be able to perform routing function for IP version 6. Very important to remember, when you configure routing for IPv6, we need to do IPv6 unicast routing first. On router 2, I want to do the same, enable IPv6 routing, IPv6 unicast routing. Now we are going to configure static route, and I'm going to configure static route on R2. So for R2, to reach R1 network for IPv6 network, we do IPv6 route. The remote network is 2001 DB8 CAFEA double colon with a /64. I'm going to use next hop IP address to configure it. So the next hop is a 2001 DB8 CAFE 12 double column 1. Now check the routing table of R2. We do show IPv6 route. We can see instead to have directly connected network, and it also has a static route be configured. Use the next hop IP address for the static route. For R1, because there are two networks connect to router 1, I can configure separate static route for each of the network. But just try to make things simple. On R1, I'm going to configure a static default route for IPv6. So on R1, to configure the default route for IPv6, we do IP6 route double column /0. I will use exit interface as 000. Now check the routing table, show IPv6 route, and we have the static route, which configure with the exit interface. So in the routing table, it shows as a directly connected. Let's see if my R1 can ping PC. So on R1, I'll ping 2001 DB8 CAFE1 double column file. That is a PC1's IP address. Same, we can ping from PC0 to PC1 or PC2. So before we configure the static default route, my PC can ping is a default gateway. That is gateway IP address I configured on the PC. So I can ping 2001 DB8 CAFE1 double column file. So I get reply, and I can ping another IPv6 address, CAFE2 double column 5. So the PC is configured with IPv6 unicast address as its default gateway, but the PC can also configure with a link local address as a default gateway. To check the router's link local address, we can do show IPv6 interface brief. We'll find out the interface has two IP address configured for it. One is a 2001 DB8 CAFE, that is by static configuration. When we configure the interface with a static IPv6 address, a link local address also be created for that interface. The link local address starts with FE80. The link local address need be unique on the link. So from PC to router 1, we have unique link local address on this link. So PC can configure with a link local address as a default gateway. If we want to change the link local address on the router, I can configure with the interface G01 IPv6 address FE80 double column 1. So I set up G01 with the link local address FE80 double column 1. I can do the same for the serial interface, and I configure with the, forgot to specify the link local. I can do the same for the serial interface, configure with the FE80 double column 1 link local address. The link local address only need be unique on the link. So when I configure R1 at 00 with FE80 double column 1, here on R2, I can't have FE80 double column 1. I need to configure with other link local address. But on other link, the link connect to G01, I can use the same link local address. Let's see what will happen if I change the PC's default gateway IP address with the link local address of the router, FE80 double column 1. Now go to check the ping. I still can ping the same IP address. So in this short video, and I did show you how to configure static and default IPv6 address, or how to configure static and default route for IPv6. Thank you for watching.